In the words of Marco Bizzarri, diversity and inclusion, which are the real grounds for creativity, must remain at the center of what we do. This quote is imperative in the lens of humanity, not just human resources, America, or extremely diverse environments. Society should be dedicated to extending the realms of both diversity and inclusion. As a minority who heavily feels the consequences of intersectionality, I thoroughly understand the importance of educating others and having allies who understand my experiences and how they have shaped my life journey. However,
with non-Hispanic whites making up a declining percentage of our population, with only 63.4% being white, which is down from 80.3% in 1991. Our nation has been forced to come to terms with our history, present, and future situations. The increasing minority representation in the US has widened many people's eyes to the fact that these D&I issues no longer affect a small minority, but a large and growing voice.
Diversity and inclusion, or D&I as it is often referred to by the many companies, has been one of the most sensitive and sometimes controversial subjects in the workplace, dating back to inception some of its frontrunners, such as Title VII and affirmative action. It is a controversial but business necessity. Diversity and inclusion is mentioned at least once in every single onboarding for any job, included in almost every strategic plan, and it has gone from being the right thing to do to an initiative that can affect the bottom line and result in huge financial gain when executed properly.
Diversity is being invited to the dance. Inclusion is being asked to dance. This quote by Verna Myers is the perfect explanation of diversity and inclusion. Diversity centers around people who come from different cultures, locations, and worldviews. Inclusion is where we exercise the ability to include these various backgrounds so that everyone feels connected. Diversity highlights our similarities and differences, but inclusion utilizes them, ensuring that everyone has a seat at the table.
We Are Listening and Learning has become the new thoughts and prayers in response to racial injustice. As a society, the influential and powerful have found another way to circumvent action with empty assurances. Many new diversity trainings will be rolled out and try to shed the light on experiences of others. The words diversity training often evoke a collective sigh and at times is empty words about treating one another with the golden rule. Too often, diversity is seen as equal opportunity, and while this is important, the conversation should shift to equity. Diversity training should educate and inform, but more importantly, it should provide people with specific actions on how to become allies. Human resource professionals ought to assume this allyship with their employees and organizations.
So diversity and inclusion is a subject that has become increasingly relevant this year with all of the social injustice issues we have faced as a nation. These recent events have demonstrated that D&I continues to be a challenge today, despite the amount of attention that leaders all over the world have given it during countless discussions. D&I continues to be a challenge today because we tend to approach it only from a surface level. We need to dive into the deeper levels of D&I in order to be able to find the best solutions for this challenge.
There are those who believe it needs to be at the forefront of company initiatives, while others believe that diversity and inclusion will naturally fall into place in the workplace. The reality is that D&I progress and success does not just happen. It requires commitment and focus on making the workplace a better and welcoming place for people of all different backgrounds and cultures. In order to be more inclusive and accepting, we have to have difficult conversations and be willing to hear opinions and experiences that differ from our own.
Diversity and inclusion is a topic almost every working professional has been exposed to. Whether you're working for a government institution, university, or large corporation, diversity and inclusion has become a point of emphasis in recent years, making efforts to prioritize equal opportunity and mutual respect across the workplace. Over the past 3 months, the conversation has expanded exponentially in the United States. As recent acts of social injustice, police brutality, and an outcry for political action have been brought to mainstream media. Many organizations who were previously quiet on these issues have spoken out and made it a priority to have open conversations with their employees and implement new policies surrounding diversity.
Identity. Identity is determined by answering the questions. Who are you? How would you define describe yourself to a stranger? How would your closest friend describe you? How did you become who you are today, and what experiences have made you who you are? The answers to these questions make up everything that makes us unique and gives us a sense of identity. In addition to identity, there is a self. Your self is the totality of your characteristics, memories, and personhood. These combine to form an identity, which is described as what it means to be you. In specific context, it is the practices and categories you associate with, your commitment to a set of goals, values, preferences, and interests, and the different social roles and personal identifiers we possess and resonate. For instance, I'm a black male from Columbia, South Carolina, and this has shaped me by exposing me to many different situations and environments which stress the importance to me of diversity and inclusion.
The basic definition for identity centers around how we see ourselves and how others view us. Within the diversity and training videos, we see that many people have specific definitions of how they want to be seen. Although we are not always seen in the way that we want to be seen, people may choose to identify as an artist or journalist. However, they may be disheartened to know that others see them as a white male. This means we must work to understand the multifaceted levels of identity that represent a person. The real work is putting aside your own assumptions about someone else's identity. So I am a black female who grew up in the South Carolina all my life, and this has shaped my identity because I have become aware of how other people view me as a black woman. However, there are many different identities that I choose to identify with, such as dancer or artist or even scholar.
Identity is a combination of how we see ourselves and how others see us. It includes the way we relate to social and historical categories. Many of these aspects change over time, so our identities can shift based on context, experience, and many other factors. Sometimes your identity is in flux, meaning that you can have multiple identities. In fact, research suggests that we can hold as many as 7 different identities as central to how we define ourselves. Sometimes your identity is in transition, shifting from a central identity and its associated beliefs and behaviors to the integration of another identity. Then there is intersectionality, which is the idea of multiple identities viewed within the social and historical context of power, privilege, and discrimination.
Political correctness is the conscious avoidance of speech and actions that exclude or insult socially marginalized groups. We have to be cognizant of the choice of language in order to respect and have kindness for those around us. Sometimes people feel that they are being silenced because they have been told they cannot use certain words or phrases they have used in the past. However, this is where understanding comes into play. We must strive for political correctness in order to show respect and understanding for others. If people took more time to understand the importance of political correctness, they would not feel overburdened or restrained. Political correctness actually increases creativity. Sometimes in group situations, there can be an overwhelming fear of offending those who are different from the majority, and that can hinder conversation. It is imperative to form ground rules and expectations of what should and should not be said. Once these expectations are set, individuals feel more comfortable sharing their ideas, and creativity and productivity have a healthy space to flourish.
An ally is someone who belongs to one or more groups who have historically been given power. They then use that power to advocate for others. A good ally is comfortable with their own identity and has taken the responsibility of learning about their own and marginalized groups' heritage, culture, and relationship. They listen and respect the perspectives and experiences of marginalized group members. Privilege, on the other hand, is an unearned advantage that others do not have. Privilege can impact individual success and opportunity. For example, a man's earnings being higher than a woman's even if they had the same education. Privilege can also be invisible through unspoken perception of what is considered professional or what behavior is considered normal.
Power is a very interesting concept. It has the ability to direct or influence the behaviour of others or the course of events. Although we may not think it, we all have some degree of power over each other, whether that be big or small. We see power come out in the workplace and in society in a number of different ways. Historically in America, some groups have been empowered while others disempowered. There are also different types of power: reward power and coercive power. This comes from the ability to reward others for complying or punish them for not. Normative power comes from holding accepted group, community, or societal norms or values. Referent power comes from being associated with a desirable person or group. Finally, expert power comes from the perception that the person or group has more knowledge than others.
One of the things that is crucial to the notion of diversity and inclusion is communication. Politically correct communication is conforming to a belief that language and practices which could offend political sensibilities, but there are some inclusive actions that enhance diversity communication, including language barriers. Therefore, we have to be patient, ask questions, add visuals as necessary, but there's also gender-specific language that can be problematic. Gender-inclusive language can save time and effort because it does not require an awareness of an individual's gender identity in order to communicate respectfully. Terminology is even more problematic, having to work to avoid using derogatory terms, explaining our point of view if offended, and thinking carefully before speaking or reacting.
Code switching is the action of adopting language to an environment, typically switching back and forth between two or more languages. It has become a way for people to conceal identities that have once been characterized as unprofessional or unfit for the workplace. Many minorities have become quite skilled at code switching, which is problematic. This behavior reinforces there's a right way to speak. There's also this notion of passing, which is rooted in the United States history and current struggles with racism. Passing refers to the complexion of the skin for African Americans or other races. As a Latina woman, I very much experienced being a white Hispanic versus some of my other family members who are considered to be more authentically Hispanic because of their darker complexion. Passing also exists quite heavily in the LGBTQ+ community by appearing heterosexual in some situations for fear of discrimination or simply because it makes life easier. I chose the pathway of human resources because of the potential to progress society and create monumental change. In any organization or role, I will have the opportunity to use my allyship to advocate for others and ensure all individuals have a seat at the table.
My primary goal as a human resource professional will be to help facilitate success in my organization by using human potential in a way that helps them move forward in their careers in the best way possible.
Diversity and inclusion are not a sprint to the finish. Rather, it's a steady run where incrementally individuals become more accepting and understanding. Every day, we can strive to do better and be better through simple acts such as listening to coworkers, asking questions, and respecting opinions that are different from the norm.
As I begin my career in human resources, my plan is to bring forth direct educational knowledge and my corporate experience by tackling 3 specific target areas. Key factors I challenge myself to focus on after entering the workforce are recruitment. Diverse talent deserves the advocacy that majority groups receive. Number 2 is mentorship. The importance of sponsorship and mentorship did not hit home for me until my first time in grad school at Wake Forest University. Continuous education is the last piece. One-time diversity and inclusion training will not change circumstances overnight. We are currently in a state of social unrest, therefore consistently educating employees has to be a top priority.
If you are trying to change the hearts and minds of certain individuals, you must make it relevant to their current situations and speak to them in a language that they can understand. Any resource which promotes a diverse and inclusive environment is a positive one. But individuals practicing and going into the field of HR in the year 2020 are most likely already fully bought into the promoting influence and respect and belonging in the workplace. Having been exposed to diversity and inclusion principles, I will be on the lookout for future examples that I could bring to my future place of work so that I can help train others to have the longest and most positive impact possible.
As an HR professional, I realize that it is imperative that I seize the moment, that I take advantage of all the opportunities that are going to be afforded to me to influence teams, to leave a lasting impact, to not only contribute, but to transform companies, creating an environment where everyone is encouraged to be their best selves all the time. As easy as diversity and inclusion seems on the surface, the fact of the matter is that it's a long road to the inclusive world that we imagine. It is crucial that we take measures to ensure that the blatant inequalities are addressed and fixed in society and in the workplace.
Although in recent years companies have made efforts to improve their diversity and inclusion practices, there is still much work to be done. In a recent study by Deloitte, 2/3 of leaders, 68%, feel they create empowering environments in which, for example, employees can be themselves, raise concerns, and innovate without fear of failure. Just 1/3, though, of those employees actually agree. I realize that I can have a positive impact on the organization and the employees I support by implementing the inclusion strategies, acknowledging my own bias, and making efforts to use appropriate terminology.
Diversity should not be just a chore or obligation. It should be a way to protect your employees while also accepting and valuing the different parts of them. It is simply about promoting dignity and respect. Contrary to popular belief, diversity and inclusion practices are not intended to step on toes. The goal is to provide equity and to attempt to make up for years of oppression and disparities that still have an effect on marginalized groups today. And moving forward, we should always try to be an ally to be accepted of complex identities despite our personal feelings. We should work towards communicating in a civil manner that does not insult each other within the workplace. This is the only way to have social cohesion within the world that is becoming more connected on a global basis. As technology continues to advance, we can expect greater abilities to connect with others. It will not be necessary to travel to different countries to experience cultures. With that, we should begin the groundwork of working to become better global citizens. Diversity and inclusion training is the foundation of this groundwork.